If you're actually serious about being rich this year, but you're a busy person with no time to spare, or maybe even just a plain lazy person who'd rather hang out with your friends and play video games at home, I am going to introduce ETFs to you. Now, some of you that have watched my videos before, you probably know what they are. But in this video, I'll go over a quick intro of what ETFs are, why they're a great choice, and then recommend 5 specific ones that can actually really make you some money. Now, why ETFs? I remember back in business school, my finance and economics professor was telling us that there are more actively managed funds than not that perform worse than a passively managed index fund, say the S&P 500. Now, actively managed funds, they're usually managed by some high-level, highly experienced MBA from an Ivy League portfolio manager that tries to beat the market, which is why the expense ratios for actively managed funds are usually higher than passively managed ones. And according to this, even they can't do it, despite their specialized training, experience, and education. So it could be something about being human that just makes us on average naturally worse at stock picking. And just overall, ETFs are a lot less work for you. So instead of spending time researching individual companies and then buying shares for 500 or 1,000 different companies, you can just invest into a single ETF, say the VOO. And that'll basically be the same since VOO tracks the S&P 500. And you usually want to invest into more than just one single company because diversification helps minimize risk. Say, for example, if you've had your life savings into Hertz Rent-A-Car and it went bankrupt, and then your stock crashes, you'd probably be out of your life savings. But if you own some of Hertz, Apple, Walmart, Tesla, Nvidia, you'd probably still be fine. Now expand that portfolio to a portfolio of 500 companies, and you probably get the idea. Now the number one ETF on this list is VOO, which is the Vanguard S&P 500. And since we're already talking about VOO, this is the first one on the list. It's one of mine and many other people's favorite ETF because it tracks the S&P 500, which the S&P 500 is comprised of the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the US. So you have Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, the FANG companies, and many more. So it provides instant diversification, and overall, it's a pretty good gauge of how the overall stock market is doing. Some years the return is less, and some years it's actually more. But since it was first created to today, it's been averaging about 10% each year. So historically, it's provided some pretty reliable growth. And some years it's even better. The 1 year return has been almost 20%. And if you know anything about compound interest, then you know that your investment grows faster the sooner you invest it. Number 2 is VTI, which is the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund. Now this one is a little bit like VOO, except this one has even more companies. So instead of just the 500 largest companies in the US, this one includes almost 4,000, and they span a variety of different sizes. In terms of returns, as with all of these, it's a little variable, but generally this one has comparable returns to VOO. Number 3 is QQQ, which is Invesco's QQQ Trust Series 1. This one is another one of my favorites, and we're talking about the QQQ, which tracks the NASDAQ 100, and that's made up of the 100 largest non-financial companies in the US. Comparing with the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100 is usually considered to be higher growth and higher risk than VOO due to its focus on technology firms. However, in recent times, VOO and QQQ have somewhat been neck and neck, but both are great options, especially in terms of diversification. Number 4 is TOPT, which is iShares Top 20 US Stocks. Now, this ETF is an interesting one because it's actually pretty new. It was created just a few months ago, back in October 2024. And what this one does is that it tries to track against the performance of the top 20 largest US companies in the S&P 500. Number 5 is IBIT, which is the iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF. Now this is probably the moment that you've all been waiting for, because this is the one that ended 2024 at 238% of the price it started in the beginning of 2024. Now, if you've ever wished that you bought Bitcoin back when it was affordable for most people, when it was a few cents, dollars, or even hundreds of dollars per share, which I know many people that do, and those that did buy it back then, they're retired comfortably now or extremely rich. Here is your chance. This one is an ETF that primarily tracks against Bitcoin, but unlike Bitcoin itself, which the last I saw it was $90,000 per share, this one is actually less than $100 per share. So that's still pretty affordable if you're looking to buy a share or a few, or maybe a few more. So wrapping up in conclusion, these are 5 popular ones. As always, do your own research and decide if these will fit accordingly to your financial goals. Some investments are inherently more risky than others, but with greater risk can come greater reward. Ultimately, it's about what you can stomach and what you want out of it in the end. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.